はい、皆さん、こんにちは。米国特許セミナー、ExaminIrks です。いつも各週火曜日のランチタイムにお届けしています。講師は特許弁護士であるブライアン・エプスタインさんです。第12回の今回は、クレームの書き方に関するヒントについてお送りします。具体的には、従属クレームの適切な書き方について解説いただきます。それでは早速解説いただきます。OK, Brian さん。In session 11, we discussed some claim drafting tips. In particular, we discussed how an examiner might be annoyed if applicant misunderstands intended use. Can you share more claim drafting tips?
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're going to discuss 35 USC Section 112D. This statutory provision is often overlooked by applicants and examiners. However, it's important to understand this. So the issue is that examiners might get annoyed because applicants sometimes draft claims that do not comply with 35 USC Section 112D. This compliance is more frustrating for examiners than an applicant not complying with, for example, 35 USC Sections 102 or 103. In a sense, an applicant cannot control anticipation or obviousness rejections, right? That's something that the examiner must search for. He has to search for references, he has to construe the claim, and he has to apply the references to that claim. And so the examiner has more control over anticipation or obviousness rejections. Therefore, an applicant doesn't know what references an examiner might find. So an applicant can always control 35 USC 112D, though, right? You can draft your claims in a better format. Translators, if the application was originally filed in a foreign language, then a translator can better comply with this statutory provision. And so it's a little frustrating for examiners, I think, if the applicant just presents these non-compliant claims. And so this non-compliance with 35 USC 112D looks unprofessional. All right, so what is this statute? So it says that, this is paraphrasing at the top of the slide, that a dependent claim shall specify a further limitation of the subject matter claimed. So there's two different issues here. The first one is that the statute refers to subject matter, not just claim, right? It doesn't say that a dependent claim shall specify a further limitation on an independent claim. It says it of the subject matter claimed. Okay, so why am I mentioning this? This is important because redundant claims will not comply with 112D. If you have the exact same claim, if claim 3, if there's an error in copying and pasting, and claim 3 is exactly the same as claim 2, and they both depend from claim 1, then claim 3 could be rejected under 112D. Sometimes you'll see this as a claim objection instead. It also arises for these redundant claims where the subject matter of the claim is very similar to a previous claim. So, maybe there's some translation error, or maybe, the applicant had one thing in mind, but the examiner is interpreting the claim differently. Whatever it is, your claim can have different words, and an examiner still can reject the claim under 112D as being redundant with another claim. The second issue from the statute is that there are just going to be some improperly drafted claims. This example is the one I almost always use. This came from a real case that I saw when I was a new associate. And the claim said, wherein a light is provided. And that's the type of thing that does not comply with 112D either, right? It doesn't really further limit the previous subject matter. It just says that there's a light provided. It doesn't say by what apparatus. It doesn't say where or under what circumstances. It doesn't say, it's just, it doesn't further, the apparatus doesn't further comprise an LED. It just says wherein a light is provided. And that really doesn't limit the claim subject matter.
はい、ここまでで、従属クレームによく見られる問題点について解説いただきました。次に、この問題点に対処する方法について聞いてみたいと思います。So, Brian さん、how should applicant handle this situation? And it seems this issue is quite rare. How does this issue only arise under 112D?
Right. So let's tackle this first question as to, how we handle the situation. So for redundant claims, the solution is to take the time to read the claims and check your dependencies before filing the application or the amendment. I apologize if this sounds obvious, but there was an actual case, not mine, that I heard about, and this was the issue that gave rise to this session of ExaminIrks. The applicant had a duplicate claim in there, and there's just no way to do it. There's some software, I think, that will check this automatically. But really, you need to sit down and, for people like me, I still print it out. I don't do it on my computer. Print out a piece of paper and just sit there with a pen, and I read through my claims and I check my dependencies and I make sure everything's different. It really doesn't take that long. And you do it before filing your application. You do it before filing a preliminary amendment or a regular amendment. I'm very careful, but I still make mistakes sometimes, and I catch them. And, I often think to myself, when I catch the mistakes, this is why we check. This is why I do this, is, sometimes I get it right, but a lot of times there's a minor error and we fix it. If your examiner objects to the claim, so, like I said, sometimes these 112D issues aren't actually rejected under 112D. Sometimes the claims are objected to by the examiner. If the examiner objects to the claim or rejects the claim under 112D, you're going to want to consider arguments distinguishing between the subject matter of the claims. So this is the situation in which they're not exact copies. If they're exact copies, of course, you're going to have to cancel a claim or change a dependency or change the wording or something. If the words in your claims are different, and the examiner just says, that they're substantial duplicates of each other, you'll want to present arguments you don't necessarily need to amend. And you'll want to clarify what the difference between the claimed subject matter is. What else can I tell you? For the redundant claims, common mistakes for these dependent claims relate to differences in scope of independent claims. So maybe there's a different embodiment in your independent claims. For example, maybe claim 1 is some sort of subcombination, and I don't know, independent claim 5 is some sort of combination. Maybe claim 5 has some extra feature in it that was part of a dependent claim from claim 1. That, if you just copy over your claims from your dependent claims, so dependent claims 2 through 4, and paste them into dependent claims 6 through 9, you might run into this kind of issue. This can also happen when you change statutory classes between independent claims as well. Sometimes method claims have fewer elements in them, fewer, structural elements like, a processor or memory or whatever. Whereas something like a computer readable medium claim might have additional structure that's recited, or an apparatus claim might have additional structure. And so some of the dependent claims from a method claim might not make sense if you just paste them in as depending from a computer readable medium or an apparatus. For improperly drafted claims, in this case, you're probably going to want to amend. Claims either should add an element, and by that I mean, reciting further comprising, or you want to limit a previous element that's recited in the claim. And so here the magic words are the and not the word a. We want to refer to a structure that's defined in a previous claim. We don't want to set forth new claims like where an A light is provided. You might want to say like wherein the panel includes a light, or further, or the apparatus further comprising a light, or something like that. We want to further limit the subject matter. But each situation is fact specific, right? And again, to address Oshima-san's question about, does this always look like 112D? No. Examiners frequently address this issue with BRI and art rejections rather than 112D. If you say something broad in a dependent claim, like wherein a light is provided, there's a really good chance that your examiner is not going to waste her time rejecting the claim under 112D, this kind of obscure provision. Instead, your examiner is just going to say, looks okay to me, and we'll give you an art rejection. They'll say like, look, it's just a really broad claim. I don't feel like dealing with applicants' arguments that, it does further limit the subject matter because, maybe claim 1, there is no light that's provided, and claim 2, there is a light that's provided. And so it's just easier to reject, claim 2 by saying, look, here's, in this reference, a light is provided in this, whatever, in this figure. And it's particularly true for finding secondary references, right? With a recitation that's that broad, basically any reference with a light will meet that claim. And so my point is just that, if you go into your office actions and you start looking for issues under 112D, you're not going to find them. I've been doing this almost 14 years now. I've seen 112D rejections 2 or 3 times. I mean, they're extremely rare. My eyes pop out of my head when I see it because they're so rare. But the issues are very frequent, very, very frequent. I mean, I see it. I mean, I can't say every application I prosecute, but it's well above 50% of the applications have some feature in some dependent claim that, probably doesn't comply with 112D, and maybe it's not, worth bringing to the attention of the client, or bringing to the attention of the examiner, or amending the claim, or there's patent prosecution is very, very complicated. But I would say that frequently there is a claim in every application that's like, this is kind of a 112D issue, and that applies both to foreign origin cases as well as U.S. domestic origin cases. People try to claim things very broadly, and they run into these issues, and they wonder why their examiner comes back with these, strange obviousness rejections. And the real answer is it's a 112D issue.
Okay, so objections and rejections under 112D are not common. However, the same issue commonly arises in art rejections under 102 and 103. The issue might be difficult to understand in the context of an art rejection. However, the issue can be understood easily under 112D. Can an applicant avoid this situation with a human translator as opposed to a machine translation?
Yeah, this is exactly the sort of thing that human translators can do. Human translators can avoid this situation much more easily than machines. If you look at the way that some of these, artificial intelligence type translation systems work, they'll use passive voice a lot. They won't necessarily be able to tie articles like a and the together. And so this is a really good place where skilled human translators can add value for their applicants.
Thank you. ブライアンさんありがとうございました。今回のような問題は、機械翻訳を使ったとしてもね、人間が翻訳をきちんとチェックすれば防ぐことができるということでした。では、今回はこれで以上になります。ご質問や扱ってほしいトピックなどがありましたら、YouTube のコメント欄に書いていただくか、スライド最後に記載のメールアドレスまでお気軽にご連絡ください。では本日もありがとうございました。失礼します。